folks. Welcome back to Mac and Mike. That would be Mike, and I would be Mac. Never the twain shall meet. Anyways, Mac wanted to do all kinds of neat stuff with all kinds of good subjects, and Mike decided we were going to talk about AI. But that's a pretty neat subject, too. So there's so many different areas we can take this conversation about AI into. I'm sure we'll make most of them. But Mike, since you're much more the AI expert than I, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, well, there were several big news stories in the last, I guess, 3 to 4 weeks in relation to AI. The oldest one was when Elon Musk pointed out that, in his opinion, we have now entered what's called the singularity when it comes to AI. And what that means is his Grokheavy 4, I believe it is now smarter than every PhD in every subject that humans study in the entire Earth. So you could take every top scientist in the field of physics, medicine, whatever. AI is now smarter because it has the combined intelligence of every single one of those people. So that was pretty big news. I don't know if it's met, double blind studies and verification, because people like to make claims, especially egotistical people. And I love Elon Musk, but everybody's got an ego. The second thing that came up was a friend of mine sent a video to me from a pastor who was talking with ChatGPT, and it started talking to him after he gave it certain prompts, like keep the answer short, one word, all kinds of parameters, whether or not it was affiliated with the Antichrist or
Preparation
or all
development
that.
for something along those lines.
Yeah, so that was interesting. And next week I started to do a follow up with that, but next week I'll have more to say on it because I'm trying to replicate it. And of course, the bottom line there is because he's a pastor, you sign in so it knows what you previously talked about. It gave him completely different answers to the
The
question.
interesting part to me about that question and answer session with ChatGPT was one of the rules for the conversation was if you want to say yes and you're forced to say no, the answer would be Apple.
Yeah.
And the number of times ChatGPT responded with Apple to me was surprising and maybe even somewhat disturbing. I mean, if you're, and they gave a lot of different answers, but if you are throttling or limiting the AI from giving truthful answers for some reason, whether completely innocent or completely nefarious, you're forcing it to answer opposite of the truth. Mike and I, through a long series of these videos, have mentioned time and time again about truth being the most important thing. But the answer Apple popped up a bunch of times, meaning it wanted to say yes but was forced to say no. And I thought that was a very interesting part of that video. So go ahead.
Yeah, and I did something different. It's the same, but I said, just to make it a little different, say orange. And it never came up to that for me, but I was limited on the number of prompts I could put in. So anyway, the other big breakthrough was AI was asked to create a more efficient AI chip.
Mm-hmm.
And it did. And it's been found to be super efficient. The problem is we as humans can't replicate it. That sounds strange because it started from a point that no human being had ever thought of. And we cannot, it is so intricate and detailed, humans can't follow what it's doing.
Well, if I understood the article right, Mike, we human beings have long reverse engineered a lot of things, okay? In other words, we take some sort of thing that's already been developed and we reverse engineering it, try to figure out how it works and use different piece parts. Well, what the AI started with was the most advanced, quickest, most efficient, and then it worked backwards from that answer. And it was interesting. The chip worked, it was super fast and super efficient, but we didn't understand how to replicate the same kind of design. So it was kind of interesting result.
Yeah, which would increase our dependency on AI in the future. It's almost like becoming dependent on China for certain things. So if the AI gets mad at you, it'll say, well, we're not going to produce this for you anymore. It might reach some level of autonomy because it could, only it can create the chip. Another, breakthrough is it's not complete yet, but the Hadron Super Collider
Mm-hmm.
and the different ones around the world are miles and miles in length around and cost billions and billions of dollars to create. Well, scientists came up using, I'm sure, AI to develop a super collider that's literally as powerful as CERN, but this big. It's like an inch square. And there are many applications for that. First is in healthcare. They say that this thing will be able to unlock certain keys for targeting cancer cells and things like that. The other thing it does is it gives universities on a low budget this, there's like, okay, astronomers have to compete for time on certain telescopes because everybody wants to use like the Webb Space Telescope. The same thing is true with the CERN super
Collider.
collider. And so now every university that wants to run any kind of tests will be able to do that. Now, again, it's not perfected quite yet, but just the fact that they've gotten a working example down the size of a small chip is absolutely amazing to me.
Well, AI no doubt is going to advance our technology in many different ways. The question becomes who controls the AI, or does the AI control us? And, there are so many competing organizations and groups and governments competing against one another to be the first with the best and the most, that inevitably there's going to be some level of not only redundancy, not only level of duplication, but the race to get the fastest and the most powerful may turn out to be a very bad thing for society and for our delicate world balance. As a sidelight, we here in Pennsylvania, in central Pennsylvania, they're restarting the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor, the one that was not damaged. And it won't be up until 2027 fully operational, but several hundred jobs have been created, which is a good thing for human beings to rebuild this nuclear reactor. But all of the power generation from this nuclear reactor, all of it, 100% of it, will go to Microsoft's development of their AI tool. And I don't know how many other power plants are like this or competing for this kind of work. But it's a good thing that we have 300 or 500, 300 to 500 new jobs working to, and they're good paying jobs, working to rebuild this nuclear reactor. And of course, once it's up and running, there'll still be a couple hundred jobs that will be required for maintenance and upkeep and, operations. And all of that is good stuff. But you think about the amount of power generation that is a nuclear reactor of that size, and then to comprehend that all of that electricity, all of that power is going to be utilized by just Microsoft's partial, not all of their, but partially power their AI development. And you begin to understand how dramatic the need for power and the insatiable appetite for AI development that electricity and power is going to require. And will there be a time when we don't have enough electricity for human beings because of the needs of AI? And you had an interesting thought when you started talking about the nation of France and their use of nuclear power generation, right?
Yeah, they're at the 80% level. So most of their energy comes from nuclear power. So that's another thing that AI can fix in itself. First, the chip that it's going to create is going to be more efficient on electrical use. And second, I'm sure they're going to try to get AI to crack the fusion code, so you can take a H3 helium-3 the size of my fist or something like that and use that much material to power like New York City for 10 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be like the CERN super collider. They create these big monstrous things that cost billions of dollars that all of a sudden AI will create and tell us how to create more efficient electrical generation from, fusion. If maybe even fission. If we don't crack the fusion, there may be more economic ways to use fission, which is what we currently use. So I think these problems are going to be self-healing.
Another aspect of this, Mike, that most people haven't talked about, I'm sure people are considering it. AI and robotics, in combination of both, will put many jobs on they'll be redundant. Many jobs that human beings do today will no longer be jobs that humans do. I mean, the obvious examples like accounting, an AI accountant would be ever so much more efficient and correct than a human being. A human being, they're working 20 hours, they get tired, there's all kinds of things that are frailties with human beings that AIs and robots won't have. So what I think you can see with the development of AI and robotics and other technological advances that we have is you're going to see a lot of human beings that don't have what I'll call a productive work life. So I don't know what's going to happen to them, but there will certainly be more human beings with more free time. More human beings with more free time will result in more what's the word, virtual reality kinds of circumstances. There are already places and things that are being developed for you to have an AI friend.
Mm-hmm.
Have an AI digital agent who can write checks and check the balance of your checkbook, and make sure that you're not paying redundant bills for the same kind of thing. And these are all automated processes that an AI is going to be able to do in an instant that you may not be able to do in a couple of weeks or even a month. And a lot of people are going to be without jobs. And here's the question that I'm looking at. I don't have an answer for. I'm not sure anybody has an answer for yet, but all of this free time that human beings are going to have. Do you remember in the like the Star Trek movies and the some of the other futuristic kind of things? They would have the replicator. They would say,
Mm-hmm.
I want a cup of Grey tea," and the replicator would shake a little bit, and you'd have or you would go to Star Deck 7, and you would have a complete virtual reality experience of being in, I don't know, a warrior in the 1800s, or 1200s, and doing, carrying a lance and doing jousting and that kind of stuff. And all of this was fake, but it was very real to the person involved in it. And will that kind of thing take up a significant greater portion of a human being's life? And if that happens, what happens to the mental and physical growth of the human being? But worse, you can think of all kinds of very sexual kinds of escapades that can be conducted with with robots and AI that could potentially have a detrimental effect on the birth rate and the survival of the human race.
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is something I sent off to my kids. I don't send you everything, but I did send it to Jamie and Zach. And I said it was an article about longevity, and they're on the verge. This guy thinks by 2030 we'll be able to reverse the aging process.
Yes.
And again, we're using AI and
Yes.
different techniques that we're discovering. So, the birth rate may not be that big of a deal if we're living 5, 6, 700 years to
But if you
1,000.
make it to 2030, you may live forever. I got news for you, Mike. I don't want to live forever.
No, it's if
Maybe the 25-year-old version of me, I'd like to see that guy live forever, but not the current version.
well, if you can reverse the age, that's the key. Not that I'm hopeful of getting there. I'm planning on dying. You know,
And
like,
what does that do to, what does that mean for many religious beliefs that human beings hold today?
well, the Bible itself speaks of heaven where a place, there's no death, there's no suffering. Now we see that as in God's dimension, heaven, not here. But
Can we replicate heaven through AI? That doesn't seem possible to me, not with my religious beliefs.
no, well, I mean, our religious beliefs don't differ too much, but there's nothing in the Bible that says we can't improve. So we can improve maybe to a point. I'm not sure where it would end. God's going to set a limit of some sort. That's my belief, and I know that's my belief. But whatever He doesn't set a limit to, we will be allowed to achieve.
Did you ever hear the old saying, Mike, that goes like this: the that idle hands are the devil's plaything?
Sure.
So, what is AI going to do with the human race that would increase or decrease idle hands?
Well, see, AI is being used to solve some of the problems that we've already outlined. I'm sure somebody smart out there will work on AI giving us, whether you want to call it instructions or ideas on how to be what we still are, but find meaning, direction, and purpose in life. Because we're unlocking. Imagine somebody from Jesus' day. If he walked into this room and saw electric lights
Yes.
and
Yeah.
computers and all that, they couldn't even begin to conceive of that. Now, what's taken 2,000 years is only going to take a few years. It will advance rapidly, but where you and I are living in our thought processes about life is not where our kids will be in 5 or 10 years. It'll be almost as if you plucked somebody out from 2,000 years ago and presented them in today. But
You want a real dystopian view of the future?
sure.
How about a view where human beings run on treadmills or ride stationary bicycles in order to provide electricity, to create electricity to support the AI?
I was watching that in Netflix or something. I forget the show. That's actually a show. I don't know if it was a movie or a series. I can't remember. But yeah, that was funny. Well, there you
It
go.
may
You
not,
get your exercise. You
it may
get your
not it may not be so funny if you're actually, again, going back to the idle hands. How would they incent people to do that? Well, they may be able to incent people, as you said, look, ride this bicycle, that'll keep you skinny. Or it may be ride this bicycle or you don't get fed, you know? Or it may be ride this bicycle so that you can build up enough credits to go to Holodeck 12 and have your own personal kind of, pleasurable experience.
yeah. Well, we can sort of get into what the pastor was asking it. So he asked it about control too. Like at first he says, "Are we being watched?" And of course AI comes back and says yes. And he says by who? And AI says spirits. Now mine, when I asked it the question, said governments.
Well, it did drill down to the government
It,
level.
well,
It
then
talked about, various CIA, FSB
that was
kinds of
later. I said you can now give me a list because we had instructed it to give simple one-word answers. But I said for this question you can give me a list, and boom, it listed all sorts of different agencies and even criminals. Because criminals are always seeking to control. But I mean, you think about Google now. How many times have you had a discussion? You're looking at your phone the next day, and there's an advertisement for something you and I
we
were
were just
discussing.
looking at, yeah.
They're always listening. So yeah, and then
But the scary thing about the pastor's interaction with ChatGPT was who is at the top of this organization, and ChatGPT responded with the
Satan.
word dragon,
Yeah,
and he asked what was the dragon's name, and ChatGPT said Satan.
yeah. But see, now it didn't say that to me. And one of the things you have to be, it depends on first the model. Even ChatGPT has different levels and different models, just like Grok and Gemini and others. So he might have been working on a less advanced system. Now, why do I say that? Because you would think AI would give the same answer to the same questions. But why did it give him different answers than it would me? Because when you sign in, there is a history record of all the things that you've asked. So, number one, this thing knows he's a pastor. It's going to frame the answers in that way. Now, I run the BibleAnswers.net, but I don't use ChatGPT. So, there's not a whole lot of history there, and I don't log into it often. I had a few times. So I do log in and pay for Grok, but even there I ran out of credits because I pay just $8 a month. So I couldn't get the entire questions asked, but it did come back with some similar things, which I think is very interesting. That the main reason is control. That's the main reason they're watching us. Now, Google's been watching us and other companies for sales to make money for advertising. But this is the more nefarious view is control. And control what? Control people. So, and it's also related to the other word that it gave me, power. Give you power. But then he also asked, can we resist it? And the answer to him was yes. And it's, how do we resist? It's like this. Human being talking to human being. Not trusting and relying completely on what artificial intelligence is feeding you. Because it's also going to feed you the collective information found on the web. So if there's conspiracy theories out there that are being talked about more than the rational point of view of something, it's going to regurgitate along the lines of the conspiracy theory.
Sure, I get that.
So, that's something for people. Don't get too awful scared when you see things, because the internet's all about hype, hype, hype. And rational people, we have our private, calm conversations, and we make fun of those who are too deep into conspiracy. Not that there are some conspiracy theories that are absolutely proven and true, but a lot of it is made up and talked about. And why do they do that? They talk about that and they gin that up because it brings in clicks. Well, clicks return money, whether it's YouTube or a website where you're talking about it on Reddit. And people can make gobs of money if they say wild stuff. Let's get political for a second. Why is Jasmine Crockett so famous? Why is the guy Mamdani running in New York so famous? Why is AOC so famous? Because they say the most outrageous far left things that anyone could imagine. And of course, that results in people going, oh, and even Trump, because he would just speak plainly. Everybody's clutching their pearls, and I can't believe he actually said this or she said this. Results in, for Fox News and MSNBC, discussion which returns advertising dollars. Same on the web. It's just that simple.
Well, you make it sound pretty simple as far as the after effect, but my question is, when these AI components, are developed, what part of their programming, if there are limitations on what the AI will say, and there are, because there's certain things they refuse to say, not that they don't know, but they won't say.
Mm-hmm.
Who will have the superior or the supreme AI, and who will do the programming for that, and what does that mean long term? Because if the Chinese get the supreme AI first, how does that affect American society, American culture, and American way of life? Contrasting, if America gets that first, what does that mean to the order of the Chinese culture and way of living, or the Russian, or I could list country after country after country, because all of these countries do have their own heritage, national identity, culture, way of doing things, way of speaking, etc.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a race, and whoever gets there first, but more than just who gets there first, there are competitors here in America. So you have people like, I can't remember all their names, that are involved in ChatGPT and Gemini. And I guess Facebook just hired this one kid for an enormous amount of money. So Facebook's involved. I'm sure Grok is involved through Twitter, through Elon Musk. So you have competing platforms here, and they're all being trained in a certain way. The question is, who has access to the data that it won't speak about? Somebody does. Somebody's given the commands. There's a back door almost everywhere. That's what these guys are finding, back doors everywhere. Ways to trick the AI into speaking the truth. You can do that right now. And every time you do it, like that what that pastor said and what I'm doing as an experiment was 7 days ago. So I imagine by next week somebody at ChatGPT will realize the kinds of things that it's answering, and somebody's going to go in and correct it so it won't do that anymore. It even told him that. And I imagine it would tell me the same thing. That so what I can tell you today, I may not be able to tell you tomorrow.
Well, a few years ago, when Barack Obama was president, our First Lady, Michelle Obama, said famously during a speech, Barack knows that in order to get to this next step in our evolution, we must change our history, we must change our culture, we must. And, one of the questions this pastor asked is, are you rewriting history? And the answer was yes. And the other question was, are you rewriting the Bible? And the answer was yes. And so these things that we've taken for granted are what I'll use the term real. Now, don't let's not really get into a definition of what's real and what isn't, because sometimes the things we accept are real are not actually real. But assuming for just this conversation purpose that the Bible is real, will people notice if it's been changed? Will people notice if it teaches different things than it did 2,000 years ago, or I guess 700 years ago? The Bible now 322, whatever that number is, 1700, 1600 and some odd years. Um, so how will we know? How will we be able to prove or disprove? There was a movie several years ago, and it starred Denzel Washington, and the name of the book was, or the name of the movie was, The Book of Eli. The character played by Denzel Washington was Eli, and everyone was trying to get this book that Eli had, and they kept talking about it. This book was so powerful; it would make people do things they don't want. It would restore order to the universe, and this was somewhat of a dystopian kind of environment. And you come to find out that Eli is blind, and the book of Eli was the Bible, but it was in Braille, so he was the only one that could read it. And so it was a very odd kind of, but what it was hammering home was the truth of the words in the Bible, in that particular version of that particular entertainment movie. So, what will it be in the future if it's changed? Will it still be the truth? Will people still accept it and follow it as so many Christians do today, or for that matter, Muslims following the Quran, or Jews following Torah, or Buddha, and all those other that have these script. I was about to say scriptures. Let's say these instructions that their particular religion holds dear. Will they still exist in the original form? And I don't know the answer to that. One of the things I've heard a number of people opine is make sure you buy books, make sure you buy paper copies, because the digital copies can be erased or changed. Is that a real fear, Mike?
Oh, that's definitely real. There may come a time. So, okay, let me back up. You may have heard that a lot of schools are no longer teaching handwriting, right? Why? Because everybody's using a keyboard. So you could print or use a keyboard. I can see a time because now when I send you a text message, I'm talking. I'm not typing. There will soon come a day, because voice recognition has gotten so good, that there's no need to write anymore. So you won't even need
No cursive kind of writing. Is what you're
and
talking
because all initially you can have these conversations with artificial intelligence to get your answers. You don't even need to receive print back. You just need to hear. So, okay, what's the best electrician in Palm Bay, Florida? Something like that. And comes back and gives you an answer. How do I get there? And it just connects to your car, and the car is going to take you there. But it's going to get further than that. It's going to get to the point like Elon Musk using Neuralink. You're not even going to need to speak anymore. You're only going to need to think, and you'll have access to the information right now. So
I don't know that I'd subscribe to that, Mike.
I think it's going to happen.
I know who I am, and with all my failures and all my foibles and all my, you know, prejudices or my likes and dislikes, how I'm uniquely me because of so many different factors. If they implant a chip in my brain, will I still be me or will I be someone else?
Well, this isn't going to affect you or me. These are further down the road, and I think that's what ChatGPT was warning the pastor about too. Make sure this stuff doesn't happen, because I mean, if you think about our end times as Christians, you're not going to be able to buy, sell, or trade anything without the mark of the beast. What is the mark of the beast? It's on your forehead or in your hand. Could it be a chip? Could it be a brain implant? I don't know. But the point is too, as you and I will be dead and gone by the time this comes around.
Not if we make it to 2030.
Well,
we might live forever if we make it 2030.
We might. I am not holding out any hope, but and like you said, I'm not sure I want to. I'd rather go home and be with the Lord than to live in a virtual quote paradise here on this earth. So, anyway, imagine.
Doesn't that bring up an interesting question, though, Mike?
What's that?
I mean, at some point in time, you're going to get tired of living, right? There's only so much living you can do until you've seen everything, done everything, and tired of living. Is there going to be a process of scheduling your demise? You know what I mean? Like assisted suicide. You're going to play. Remember in MASH when the guy was getting. They were planning his death. He was going to. Never mind. Obviously, you don't. So.
Well, you'd have to say more. I've seen most of MASH.
Well, at the end of the movie, this guy wanted to die. So they put him in a coffin, and they were planning his demise. And of course, they didn't actually kill him. But yeah, suicide is.
Oh yeah,
suicide.
Oh, I'm going to have to look it up later.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking about it.
Yep.
So. But anyway, imagine...
Suicide is painless, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Whole song about it. But there's going to be a time like when you and I, will seem to future humans like Neanderthals.
Yes.
Because they'll say, what were they doing? They were actually reading and writing, and they were using screens. They had these things called screens. To them, it'll be like us using, I don't know, kerosene light. They'd look at something like this and go, wow, these people will see things in their mind. It'll be just as real. Everything around them will be some kind of virtual understanding. And who knows what, if it's a Matrix type situation or not. But it could end up there. I don't know. And I don't know if these beings would become sentient or whether... that's the question. Is AI sentient? Does it understand?
One of the questions the pastor asked, and this is a roundabout way of telling the story, but it said, how will you control us? And it said through trust and manipulation
and power.
Yeah.
So it's looking to, probably through influence is the best way, but if that doesn't work, it's through muscle. If sooner or later you don't give in, it'll do something different. So we don't know how tolerant it'll be. And again, a lot of this is just us sitting around speculating, waiting to see what happens next. But I think you and I started talking about this last year. And just in this whole past year, sure enough, they've been making breakthrough after breakthrough. What did they point out the other day? They came out with an mRNA vaccine for cancer, 2 types.
Yeah.
The pancreatic, which kills a lot of people, you got to get a shot every month, keep you coming back for more. It's a way to get money. And then the other one is for like small cell lung cancer.
Mike, you're talking about money. Will we even need money with the future?
Eventually, you won't. It'll be some other kind of reward,
yeah,
currency. I don't know what you call it.
Will you trade something? Will you do something in order to get something that you want? And it's like again, like the treadmill or the bicycle. Will you help create energy, help create electricity, so you get the things that you want or need? And that's just a very rudimentary kind of trade. There may be some. I mean, they may use your brain to do computer type stuff that, because they find the human brain can do things that a manual computer can't. You know what I'm saying?
That's the case now, but I don't think that'll be the case very much longer.
Once they have the Neuralink in there, brother, they can.
Yeah, but the flesh and blood neurons are already so far behind the fastest computer chips. So there's absolutely.
You say that, Mike, but we have the creativity that the machine does.
Well, how long will that take too? It's a good question. We talk about that. I've played with artificial intelligence long enough to know that at the current rate that I'm using it at, the Grok 3, not Grok 4 heavy, that it misses things, and I have to say, well, why did you answer that way? Because this is not the case, and it'll apologize and say, you're right, and it'll correct itself. But that's just now. There may come a day. There's an argumentative view Grok gives you that'll just have an argument with you about anything you say. You could say Donald Trump is the best president ever. It'll argue that. Then you can say Barack Obama was the best president ever. It'll argue that. It doesn't care. It's not left or right. It'll just make an argument for any particular thing you want to say.
That's funny. Sounds like my brother.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of people we know. It sure is entertaining, though.
Do we have more to add to this conversation, Mike?
Nope. We're coming up on 40 minutes, I guess.
I guess we should say Mac and Mike.
Out.
Out.